Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another podcast. So, Joker was released last weekend. Let's see how that movie did at the box office. All right, let's jump right in. So, coming in at number one is Joker. The movie opened to 93.5 million. This is a movie that I said could probably open somewhere between 90 to 100 million. Because I feel like this movie fits within the Nolan's vision of more grounded characters, more human characters, not like the one that Zack Snyder did with his other superhero movies, right? He took over for Nolan, right? And I guess he stylized it more. But this one, I feel, if you've seen the promo trailers for this movie, I feel that this one kind of more is a more grounded character. It's a more human character instead of like this Joker is more like someone with a mental illness, for example, right? I said this one, there's something to this movie, and I say it could probably open somewhere between 90 to 100 million. And I believe Warner Brothers was didn't have a lot of confidence in this movie. They were kind of estimating somewhere between like 70 to 80 million, projecting this movie to open to, and they didn't have a lot of trust in the movie as well because for this script, they only give the budget for this movie is somewhere around like 55 million or so. So this is more like a prove it movie for the people who are behind this movie. So they didn't have a lot of confidence from Warner Brothers. They thought that this movie would stir up trouble because of the character. You read reports about undercover police officers in theaters, to stop any potential problems, right? So I guess for a movie such as this, it could be bad publicity should something bad happens, right? And nothing happened as far as I know. So 93.5 million estimated opening for the Joker, which is blew everyone's expectation away except mine. It fits within that range. It is I think it's set the record as the highest October opening as well, according to boxofficemojo. And like I said, this is a prove it movie, just like I mentioned in the previous podcast, just like Deadpool, right? Fox was very concerned about having an R-rated superhero movie, and so they give the budget, and as same as Joker, the budget for Deadpool was around 58 million, which at that time was paltry, compared to the 100 million plus for other superhero movies, right? Deadpool was like pretty much made on relative shoestring budget with 58 million, and I believe for the Joker it was around like 55 or so, comparable to a Deadpool movie. So like I said, this is more of a prove it movie to Warner Brothers, and it got proven that this movie worked. So I expect to see, them taking more risk on other characters. For example, they're gonna have a sequel to this movie. Maybe, again, they're trying to mimic Marvel with their cinematic universe, and they're not that successful at it, but but they're coming together. They're coming together with Birds of Prey, for example. They're starting to find their characters, Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman, but they still need to figure out the Justice League movies, the Superman movies. The Aquaman movie did well, surprisingly. Well, not surprisingly, but I know that James Wan is going to do great things with the movie, and it proved to them that it's successful. It doesn't have to be the dark and gritty that Zack Snyder, his movies, he wanted to be dark, full of special effects, but that's not what drew people in, right? It's not the special effects. It's more about the character, and they're starting to find a groove. For example, Warner Brothers and DC, they're starting to find a groove. All right, so but reviews wise, it's not that well reviewed. 69% on the tomato meter and a B plus a cinema score. So we will have to see the second weekend to see how well this movie holds up. But already with the 93.5 million opening, proved to them that there is, this movie could work. A dark, R-rated movie could work. I mean, they prove it to Fox, with Deadpool. Deadpool proved to Fox that R-rated superhero movie could work. Right now, Joker is proving to Warner Brothers that R-rated superhero movie could work as well. All right, let's move on to number 2, which is the animation, DreamWorks animation Abominable. In its second weekend, it dropped about 42% to pull in about 12 million. Domestic gross so far is about 37 million, and let's see how it did overseas. Overseas, they put in about 40 million for a worldwide total of about 78 million. As we know, animation usually don't pulling that much overseas, especially in China. As I say in the previous podcast, Abominable is kind of like a overseas play, specifically China play, because they focus on the, like a Chinese family, Chinese characters, and Chinese settings, with the Yeti, with Asian characters taking a Yeti back to his home, right? Reviews wise, is actually pretty good, 80% on the tomato meter and A cinema score, right? But according to Box Office Mojo, again, like the China figures are not that great. So far it only had about 700k or so from China, but I don't know how updated these numbers are. But in general, right, animations usually don't do that well in China for some reason. It could be just the they think that animation is for kids. For a long time, it was the case here as well. Like animation is for kids. For China, I guess it could be the same sentiments there as well. But typically, animations don't usually perform that well unless it's like homegrown stuff. With the 20 million opening and the 12 million second weekend, Abominable is not exactly setting the box office on fire, but the budget is only about 75 million or so. I mean, it looks like it might grow somewhere between 60 to 70 million domestically, if or it could be 75 million domestically. But like I said, it's an overseas play, and hopefully they'll get more as it expands more, open in more markets. That's where the bulk of the box office would be. All right, number 3 is Downton Abby. The movie put in about 8 million in its third weekend, drop off about 44% from its previous week, and domestic gross right now is about 74 million. This is a movie that I thought it wouldn't open that well. I said it could probably open somewhere between 5 to 10 million, and boy was I wrong. It opened to 31 million, and so forth, right? It seems like it's cooling down already. There's only so many people to watch this movie that's it's a continuation of the TV series, right? If they jump right in, newcomers jumping in might not be able to know the whole story, but typically movies are made as sort of a standalone. You could kind of follow if you don't know the backstory that much, but Downton Abbey is already quite a success with its 32 million opening. But Downton Abbey is already quite a success with its 31 million opening, and it looks like it's gonna close out. I don't know. It's probably gonna get near 100 million when it's all said and done domestically, right? Let's see how it did overseas. Overseas, they put in about 62 million for a worldwide total of 135 million, and I suspect the overseas figure to be low. Because like I said, these dramas usually talky pretty much usually don't perform that well, but it looks like it is pulling in huge numbers overseas, specifically in England. All right, number 4 is Hustlers, the movie starring Jennifer Lopez, Constance Wu, and others. About strippers who drug their customers and rob from them. This movie in its fourth weekend pulled in about 6.3 million, about 45% drop off from the previous week. To pull at domestic gross is about 91 million. And let's see how it did overseas. Overseas, they put in about 18.7 million for a worldwide total of 110 million. The movie only cost 20 million to make, so it is actually doing very well domestically. It hasn't opened that wide overseas yet, but I suspect that this is the type of movie that would do well overseas as well. All right, number 5 is the horror movie It Chapter 2. It put in about 5.4 million in its fifth weekend. Drop off is about 48% from the previous weekend. Domestic gross is 202 million so far. All right, let's see how it did overseas. Overseas, it pulled in 235 million for a worldwide total of 437 million. So the budget is a bit higher from than the first movie. I think the chapter 2 cost about between 60 to 70 million to make, and while it's not gonna outgross the first movie, it's still doing pretty well since the budget is so low. Alright, number 6 is the sci-fi thriller Ad Astra starring Brad Pitt. It pulled in 4.6 million in its third weekend. Drop off is about 55% from the previous week. Domestic gross is about 44 million. And let's see, overseas it put in about 68 million for a worldwide total of 111 million. So I said this movie probably wouldn't appeal that much to the general audience. I say probably open to somewhere 20 to 25 million, but they actually opened to 19, and unlike the movies that people are interested in, like action-packed sci-fi movie, right? Astra is more like a thriller that just so happens to take place in space, and these type of movies are usually a hard sell, but I ended up saying it could probably open to 20 to 25 million because Brad Pitt is in it, and it opened to 19. So it looks like it's slowing down domestically, only about 43 million domestic in its third weekend, and 55% drop off as well. So it's going to continue to have highest drop off from there. Its only hope is the overseas market, but it doesn't look like it's getting that much traction overseas. But we'll see as it expand into more markets. Alright, number 7 is the Judy Garland biopic Judy, starring Renee Zellweger as the title character. This movie in its second weekend, it expanded. It added additional theaters. It pulled in about 4.4 million, adding nearly 1,000 theaters, 997 according to boxofficemojo. So domestic gross so far is 8.9 million. So this type of movie probably won't gross that much at the theaters, but it is an awards play. It probably costs about maybe 15-20 million to make. Like I said, it is an awards play. It's released at this time. Renee Zellweger is getting good reviews for her depiction of Judy Garland. So we'll see how this goes. It might get a re-release come award time. All right, number 8 is Rambo Last Blood. This movie is dropping quite fast. In its third weekend, it pulled in about 3.6 million. Drop off is about nearly 59% from the previous week. Domestic gross is about nearly 40 million. Let's see how it did overseas. Overseas, it pulled in about 24.5 million for a worldwide total of about 64 million. The budget is 50 million. Dropping quite fast at the domestic box office. Overseas, I don't think it opened that wide overseas yet, but the initial figures are not looking great for this movie. Let's see if it can cross the 100 million mark worldwide. Alright, number 9 is a newcomer called War. It's an Indian movie that popped up in the top 10. I put in about 1.6 million in its opening weekend. It's only opened in 305 theaters, but in these typical Indian movie fashion, it's usually very front loaded, pop into the top 10, and then it dropped off from there. So this movie is probably originally released in India, and it just have limited opening here, limited engagement, and it just, these movies just pop up in the top 10. All right, let's close out the top 10 with Good Boys. This is the R-rated comedy about a pair of teenage tweens, I guess, who's trying to get to a party and learning the rules along the way. This movie pulled in about 900K in its 8th weekend. Drop off is about 57% from the previous weekend. Domestic gross is 82 million so far, and let's see how it did overseas. Overseas, it pulled in 25.5 million for a worldwide total of 107 million. Budget's only 20 million, so it's actually doing very well, especially in the domestic market. I don't expect this movie to do well overseas at all, because comedies don't usually travel well, but it managed to put in 25 million, which is actually pretty good for a comedy. All right, that's it for the top 10. Let's move on to the new releases this weekend. We're going to have 3 big ones or wide release. They are the Addams Family, the animated version. And then a Will Smith sci-fi action thriller, Gemini Man, and then Jexi is the Adam Levine comedy. Let's start off with the Addams Family. So this is an animated movie, unlike the live action movies from years past, right? It features the voice of Oscar Isaac, Charlize Theron, Chloe Grace Moretz, Finn Wolfhard, Nick Kroll, Snoop Dogg is in this movie as well, voicing a character. Beth Midler, Martin Short, and others are in this movie. So yeah, they are hiring some well-known names to voice the character for this movie. And the movie is directed by Conrad Vernon and Greg Turnin, both of whom have animation cred. Unfortunately, this is an Addams Family movie, and there's not a huge audience for the Addams Family. It's more like a cult classic than, kind of a mainstream movie, but we don't know if this will change that outlook. I doubt it. If you've seen the trailer, it doesn't look like it's up to the standards of like Pixar, Disney, DreamWorks, etc. Budget for this movie is probably somewhere in the 70 to 100 million range because of the voice talents involved. Typically if you have nobody in this movie, it probably could be made for about 50 million or so, right? 55 million to 70 million. But this movie has some names, so it's gonna up the budget somewhat, right? And that's probably not a good thing to balloon the budget. We don't know yet. I don't know the budget for this movie, but like I said, the audience for an Addams Family movie is not that high. At least not. It doesn't reach the level of some of the more bigger animation houses, right? And the story in this movie, like them moving from their wherever they're from into a colorful town in New Jersey, and then turning the populace against them, led by this crazy mom. And then of course they reconcile, etc. So so it's not an original movie. We all seen this before, right? But this movie's targeted toward the children, the family audience, and as that I guess it suffices. So how well will this movie open to? Like I said, I don't expect this movie to open that high. Maybe 15 to 20 million for the Addams Family. All right, let's move on to Will Smith, Gemini Man. So it stars Will Smith as an assassin who's hunted by the government, and they sent his clone, a younger clone, out to kill him. And there's this morality tale involved. Clive Owen stars as the bad guy. Mary Elizabeth Winstead is in here. Benedict Wong as well. It's directed by Ang Lee. So Smith's last big movie is Aladdin, but that's not exactly him. For example, it's Disney. It's the Aladdin tale. We have to go way back to 2012, Men in Black 3. For his last movie that cracked 100 million with him in the lead, for example, right? I'm not talking about 2006 Suicide Squad. That's him in an ensemble, a superhero movie. I'm talking about with him in the lead, and that we have to go way back to 2012. So I've seen the trailer. I wasn't that impressed with the movie, right? Smith just doesn't have the swag of his big hits. It's not exactly a must-see movie, even though him teaming up with Ang Lee should be a cause for celebration. But from what I've seen so far, like I say, not that impressed. It doesn't feel like a must-see to me. I guess the big thing about this movie is the technology involved, right? Motion capture of Will Smith so that he can play himself as a younger him in the movie. So that's the biggest thing for this movie, right? So how well will this movie open to? Like I say, I don't think it's gonna open. I mean, some people say this movie could probably open to about 30 million plus, but I'm actually gonna go lower. I think Gemini Man could probably open somewhere between 25 to 30 million, because like I said, I just don't feel this. I don't feel this movie as a must see Will Smith movie or a must see Ang Lee movie. I mean, they advertise this movie just from the director of Life of Pi, because it won an Oscar, right? And Will Smith, of course, from his Men in Black movies and his other movies, right, which usually perform well. But like I said, you have to go way back to 2012 for one of his movies with him in the lead role. Just movie that's focused on him. For that movie to crack the 100 million mark, right? So I think for Gemini Man it looks expensive, but I think this movie could probably open somewhere in the 20 to 30 million range this weekend. Alright, finally we have Jexi, starring Adam Devine and Alexandria Shipp, Wanda Sykes, Michael Pena, Rose Byrne, and others. It is a comedy starring about a smartphone that got too smart and starting to control Devine's life. It's pretty much turned into his kind of smartphone girlfriend, right? And he's jealous about other people in his life. If you're looking for a comedy, sort of, this might be the movie to see or not, right? I mean, from the trailer, it doesn't have any big laughs, which is a problem. I mean, I can see this movie, right? But you've seen the whole movie in the trailer already, right? You kind of probably know how it ends. And and Adam Devine as the lead. I mean, I don't think he's that big of a draw yet. I mean, he stood out in the Pitch Perfect movies, right? But this is him in his own movie, his first movie in the lead. And I see Devine right now as kind of like Jason Bateman. He's not going to attract the big crowds. He's going to star in this movie, but he doesn't have the track record of a Jason Bateman yet, right? He only had a couple movies to his name. This is his first movie in the lead. And like I said, the problem is that if you look at the movie, it doesn't have like the big laughs and to make this into a must-see comedy. And so it's probably gonna open low somewhere, I think maybe in the 5 million-ish range, if not lower. Alright, so that's it for this week's podcast. Tune in next week to see how I did. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.